Good morning, everyone. Rebecca here. Welcome back to my aquarium. I wanted to talk to you today about a question I've gotten a few times in the last few days, which is, with everything you've been through and the way people have acted and everything going on in the world, how can you still be a Christian? And the answer to that is twofold. One has to do with my own personal story, which I had a spiritual experience when I was 14, and it came right along the time that I was trying to kind of open up after an entire childhood spent basically in a freeze state. And I took to prayer, and in that I learned how to heal. Like, your brain works by muscle memory. This is my great insight. Your brain works by muscle memory. So if you can teach your brain how you want it to think, you can figure out what your brain is doing and correct it. Then, that goes a long way towards fixing what you learned wrong. So I did that in prayer and with God. And of course, I was being raised in a Roman Catholic environment. So I was channeling all of that through the Christian faith. And I was like using these old prayers and practices and things like that in order to heal. Because, I have complex PTSD, developmental trauma is, that's also referred to, pre-verbal. And, if I had been seen by someone as a child, I would have been diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder. So I wasn't in great shape. I wasn't heading into the world in great shape, frankly. And the way that I figured out that everything works by muscle memory is actually because when I was in middle school, I started experiencing OCD symptoms, which is super, super, super common for people with developmental trauma. And because I can be extra, I don't know if y'all have noticed, my particular OCD thing that I started struggling with was I was counting my steps. And then I was counting how many steps it would take me to get from like one spot to the other. So like from the couch to the bathroom. And then I would like try and get there in fewer steps. Now, mind you, this was happening compulsively. And one day in the process of trying to take however many steps I had decided I should be taking between the couch and the bathroom, I almost had an accident. And it like was one of those wake up calls. Like, I'm doing something that is causing me to like pee myself. Like, something's wrong. I shouldn't be doing that. And that was when I realized, oh, I can't stop. Like, I'm doing this and my brain just keeps doing that. And long story short, this was when I was learning to play the flute. And I talked about this yesterday, when I explained how I kind of view the chaos of the world. And I started applying what I knew about creating and using muscle memory from the experience of learning to play the flute. I started applying that to like, my bad muscle memory, the OCD that I was trying to do. So, and I started being mindful and all of this sort of stuff. But so all of that is to say that by the time I was in touch with reality enough that I was like, what the hell is wrong with God? And I'm sorry, why do we believe he's loving? I was already like my whole kind of psychology and mental structure and way of navigating the world, understanding myself, interacting with the world had been built through my Christian faith. And it was working for me. So I was super, super, super motivated to, when I would run up against challenges, I was really strongly motivated to find like an alternative to abandoning my faith or rejecting my faith. Instead, I would say, maybe I misunderstood this, or maybe this isn't being, conceptualized properly. And I kind of look at it and go, so if I start from the premise that there's a loving God, and that he's working all things together for good, that, love is what love is, and that what we're doing here is becoming who God created us to be so that we can act kind of as vessels for him in this world. And, like this stuff. And pretty much always, that's where my theology came from. If you first, connected with me from my blog, The Upside Down World, where I used to write a lot, that's where that came from, was figuring out, how do I make sense of this faith that works for me, that's brought me healing, that is my connection with God and my way of, understanding and being in the world. And what do I do with that when I line that up with, the fact that they always pick the rapist, and that this world is a nightmare, and that, the Christian, I don't want to get into it. I'm not even going to get into it. So anyways, all the problems, all the obvious problems. So that's the personal level. Now, as to why this worked the way it did for me, I don't think that that's just me. I don't think it's just like, oh, Rebecca is so brilliant. I assure you, I would have let go of the faith a long time ago if it had been up to me. There's a verse that says Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith. He's responsible for that end of things. So what you see is what he gave me. So anyways, the Christian faith, one of the big problems with the church and why the church is so far off course, is that it is teaching to the lowly and the oppressed a gospel that is meant for Caesar, and teaching to Caesar the gospel that is meant for the lowly and oppressed. So Jesus came to set the prisoner free. Jesus came, to bring healing. Jesus came for the person who needed him, which is the person who's suffering. God is close to the brokenhearted. Christianity took off because it was a message to oppressed people. When the oppressors took over the religion, well, guess what? That teaching to the oppressed people was still there. So I was in a situation where, by virtue of being a female, oh my goodness, the horror, being born into a family line where there's a lot of abuse and a lot of trauma in the Roman Catholic Church, there was not freedom. You're not free. People were cruel. People were extraordinarily unkind. I actually had to go into the world and learn, it's not okay to talk to people like that. Sorry. I still struggle with the sharp tongue, but I try and be kind to people. But no, I came from a world where I was even though I was living in a family with a great deal of privilege, my experience of life was much closer to that of the oppressed Jewish person that Jesus was talking to than it was to the administration of the temple and state that runs things, right? So even though I was getting my religion brought to me by the church and state that run things, basically, the teaching of it is still a teaching for oppressed people. So it spoke to me where I was. When I go to, or when I talk to people who work overseas, fellow ministers and pastors and stuff, I will often encourage them, when you speak to children, tell them the story about how Jesus, said, Jesus and the little children. And tell them that story, because when I was a child, that was actually really probably the beginning of my faith, was when I realized that Jesus was on my side. I'm like, just tell them that story, because if nobody ever does anything else for them, knowing that God's on their side and that he doesn't think what's happening to them is okay, will at least give them something to hang on to, you know, because that's what it did for me. So that, that got kind of heavy, but it's heavy days. So, welcome to my world. But there is a way through. You can survive. I don't know what's going to happen. We're all going to die. I'm certain of that. There are no humans who have, pretty much, it has been a rare human who has lived an entire life without personally experiencing disease and famine and war. Planet Earth is not safe. We've done a good job, actually, of making it a much better place for us to be as far as comfort and survival. But at the end of the day, we're human. And this is the devil's playground. We're just here doing God's work. All right. Anyways, I love you all. Oh, also, if you, this may be relevant for a lot of you right now. If you are struggling with like finding how to functionally move forward as a human being in the middle of all of this, I would really invite you. I have a book. I posted it on my wall yesterday. I wrote it years ago. You probably haven't heard of it, called The Upside Down World's Guide to Enjoying the Hard Life. It's enlightening essays for growing where you are planted. And it's the ideas, the practices, and the perspectives that I myself have used so that I can keep my insides okay when the outside world is not. And I priced it as like $6. I wrote it so they're very short essays. You can read them sitting on the toilet with brain fog. And they're good also for middle school kids and adolescents. So if that is something that you think would benefit you and yours, check that out and you'll be supporting me. And that's always a good thing to do. So anyways, love you guys. I will talk with you later. Bye.